So good morning. An interesting journey getting here last night, flying in from Chicago on a late night flight. Never believe who I sat next to. You guys remember Kiss, the band Kiss? I sat next to Gene Simmons from the band Kiss.
Or you. I sat next to him at a flight event 20 years ago.
Is that right? Shockingly, he's actually a sharper guy than I would have given him credit for. Yeah, I was texting and I didn't realize who it was until I see these black boots crawling in front of me with spikes and black leather pants, and I thought, what in the world? I look up, and it's Gene Simmons. But he didn't say much for the first part of the flight, but what's interesting is halfway through the flight, he said, so what do you do? It's not something totally different than you, I can tell you that. And as we talked, he was actually intellectually very curious about senior living. And as we were departing the plane, his parting line to me was, he said, you know what's cool about what you do is, he said, when I play to my audiences, they love me. He said, when you think about who you're playing to, you're loving on them. That's a pretty cool thing. And for a rock star, right, that's a pretty profound statement, and I think that eloquently summarizes my passion for why I do what I do. You know, in terms of my path to becoming CEO of ALC and then subsequently Enlivened, John, you very eloquently shared some eloquent advice, which is, I had a CEO who told me very early on, think of your career as a jungle gym, right? If you think about a playground analogy, it's not a rope ladder that you're just climbing straight up. Go play on all of the equipment on the playground. And what he meant by that was I kind of started out as a CPA, moved to the finance side of the house, capital markets, investor relations, and I had a CEO who said, look, if you really are serious about this industry, at the time I was in the multifamily industry, he said, I'd love to expose you to different facets of our business. And so every couple of years he would tap me on the shoulder, and the company was exploding in growth, and so there was a plethora of job opportunities and career opportunities if you were willing to stretch yourself and take some risk. So I moved from the finance side of the business to what I would call corporate support. So that meant things like human resources and corporate marketing and communications and new business initiatives. That over time that kind of led to field operations and actually running, at the time, probably 200 multifamily communities all across the country. So grew up in the multifamily space and got a call from a private equity firm and said, look, we love what you're doing operationally, and at that point in time what I had realized about myself was I really loved three things. I love building cultures, I love building teams, and I love building scalable operating platforms. I was invited to lead an organization by the name of Holiday Retirement, which was a pretty significant turnaround at that point in time. I'm sure the gentlemen probably know the company's founder, Bill Sanders, who was an amazing human being and tragically passed away at the age of 64, 65, I want to say, without much of a succession plan in place. And so the company had moved to a private equity environment, and operations had tumbled, and the company needed someone to lead them through a turnaround. So agreed to do that for a period of time. That's when I really found my true passion was not only culture, teams, and platforms, but the senior housing industry, because it is such a mission-oriented industry. From there, was recruited by another private equity firm 6 years later, and so there's a company by the name of ALC. If you say the senior housing industry, ALC was one of the original, the company's founder was a lady by the name of Karen Wilson Brown, who was one of the kind of visionaries for assisted living as we know it today. Right, back in the early 1980s, assisted living as we know it today candidly did not exist. You had two options, right? What were those two options?
Nursing?
Nursing homes or
Or
living at home, right? So Karen needed to find a place for her mom where there was socialization, meals, maybe assistance with meds, but didn't need to be in a nursing home. And frustrated by a lack of options, Karen actually went out and built one of the very first assisted living communities in Oregon. You fast forward over many years, several decades, Karen grew the organization to over 200 communities across 20 states at the time. Along the way, there was a dark chapter in the company's history, to be honest with you, where the company committed fraud. The CEO who was in place committed fraud. There were some really bad cultural decisions made, and the company fell from graces with all of their trusted constituents. with employees, with residents, with family members, with capital providers, investors. As a result, the company's stock plummeted, it's a publicly traded company, plummeted from 30 down to 7. And that's when TPG, the current private equity investor, said, look, we believe that these are beautiful communities in great markets, but it's just rotten leadership and rotten culture. We need a new team to come in and try and lead that turnaround. So I'll pause on that and tell more of the story later, but that was really kind of fed my soul in terms of it's very mission-oriented. You're caring for someone's mother, someone's grandmother, which is a pretty special thing to be able to do in life. And two, professionally fed my soul from build teams, build culture, and build highly scalable operating platforms. So I've been there 6 years and having a blast.